up, and that's Ian. So perhaps we'll kick off with you, Ian.
Hi, thank you. And yeah, I thought that was a great introduction, Naomi. I think what we've seen again and again in this process since it really threatened to go completely off the rails in September is that the rank and file, the grassroots, have been the adults in the room, the canniest operators in the process. Certainly have been the ones outside Parliament and outside the former party leadership bubble. And I think that kind of saved the process from complete collapse in September. Possibility of that. I think it was shown again at conference where the vote for collective leadership was a way of banging heads together, putting manners on both sides, really, to say we can't have these nuclear tactics against each other anymore, the court cases and so on that Roger talked about in the introduction, and therefore to avoid a head-on Jeremy versus Zara leadership contest at this stage, where the party's not got much of a capacity to have to build up first. If we're to ever have that again, hopefully things will have moved on anyway in a few years' time. But as we've seen in international politics in the last few years, proxy wars can also be extremely damaging, as well as wars between the principals. So yeah, we certainly don't want it just to be Team Jeremy, Team Zara, and nobody else, especially given the electoral system that we've got now for the CEC. I think it's too small at 16 for a kind of leadership committee of that kind. I was in smaller parties with much bigger national committees than that. I think, on the other hand, for collective leadership, it was never really intended. It was the option they thought would be voted down. The dual leadership that was Zara's preferred option was not put, though I think it would have been a bad one anyway, because we've seen the results in the last few months when the dual leaders aren't getting on. You can't really expect Jeremy, to be fair, to go on a slate with certainly not given any indication he wants to be on a slate with Sarah. So I think we did almost by default get the best outcome in terms of leadership at this stage. I think in general there are arguments for a single leader who wouldn't have to be a party dictator, let alone a party owner like Farage. But at this stage, I think it's the best way to deal with the concrete situation. That said, hopefully we'll get a spokesperson out of it from outside of Parliament, and I can think of a lot of good ones. A couple of them actually were on the meeting that Naomi mentioned. I think Salma Yaqub would be an excellent spokesperson for the party. I think Michael Lavallette's speech last
Mm.
night deserves to be seen far and wide and taken on board. Because I think you're absolutely right. We need to build unity, and we need to do it to build outwards and to start regaining some of the ground of the initial 800,000 plus interest. I've even met people who've not signed up in the 800,000 but would still be interested if a viable left wing socialist workers party, pardon the pun, got off the ground. Um, and I think it's very important that we voted in the political statement debate that some people said might be part of that time wasting, of which there definitely was some, quite a lot in other ways. But to be fair, has come up even in our own CMWP Zoom chats about the working class and language. Um, and I don't think the leadership necessarily wanted us to vote down socialism and the working class. So I'm very glad we voted so overwhelmingly for it. I think it reaffirms the key difference between us and the Greens. And the tragedy is that this mass split from the Labour Party, probably the biggest ever, certainly the only ever to be led or to involve a former leader, the immediate former leader to the current Prime Minister of the Labour Party, has largely become a pipeline to the Greens, at least down south, where they're not as dysfunctional as they are up here in Scotland. And that, if that was the only outcome, that would, in a way, change the class composition of the left in a way that we've seen around the world is only helpful to the right. It can say on the left's middle class now, so the workers should go with us. So we have to win that back. I think in some ways angular positions Zara is putting are good in that. On NATO, for example, where they've got a very silly remain and reform in NATO policy. Um, I They might change that though, and so the fundamental thing is that we are a socialist working class party, and they are not. Also, I think the broadest possible alliance, the third part of the vote in the political statement, was important in that we do have to, under the leadership of the working class, with a socialist perspective, build the widest possible alliances. I think that the alliance in Stop the War with the Muslim community that's been reaffirmed in the Gaza movement over the last couple of years was put under unnecessary strain by appointing these four so-called Gaza independents to be the interim leadership that nobody elected, nobody signed up to. They signed up to Jeremy and Zara, and then extending that again and again. And I think they are a legitimate part of the movement, but you're under a harsher light if you're the unelected leadership for an indefinite amount of time. And there's been some nastiness on both sides. Tropes about socially conservative Muslims, plus some people saying that Zara is not a practicing Muslim because she's not socially conservative. I think certainly the thing about all social conservatives go away was a big mistake. Because what does that even mean? People who are opposed to the disabled and possibly anti-poor euthanasia bill, for example. So yeah, we need
Ian,
to be
uh,
socialist, working class, broadest possible coalition.
Ian,
Turn out legitimate unity ends.
sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, no, I didn't mean you cut short now, but I mean, just bear in mind there's other people with their hands up.
Cool. Thanks.
Sorry, okay, sorry.
All right, I'll just very, very quickly then at the end. I think, yeah, this thing about slates, agree about building unity, and I'd be interested to hear more about that. I think there's some people in the platform itself would be excellent candidates. Thanks.
Great.
Matthew, you're calling speakers, or if you won't, then I'll say, is it Han or Eva?
It's Han. Hi. Thanks. Hi,
Hi, okay.
everybody. My points are much more practical because that's my approach to working on this whole project. So, but so firstly, about the CEC membership, I'm really interested to know more about the mechanics of that election and if anyone know how that's going to go forward in terms of who's conducting any regional elections and how proto branches are being contacted at all, or is it just directly to the members? If anyone knows anything about that, it'd be really good to know. There's something else about knowing. So, Naomi, you mentioned lots of things that I'd not heard about, different programs, and I'd seen that Tariq Ali had spoken, and I can watch that. But you mentioned some other platforms and sects and slates, and it would just be good to have a bit more access to that stuff to read it. I don't know how widely that's going out. I was going to share something that we're doing in Brighton in terms of building branches, and I absolutely agree. Now's the time to really, or it was always the time. It was always the time to be organising locally, and we continue to do that, and we continue to encourage local branches to just keep advertising what they're doing, reaching out. But something that we're doing in Brighton, which is that so Collective Action Brighton and Hove came out of a general election campaign for Tanushka Marar, standing on the pro-Palestine, platform. So we evolved as a citywide organisation, always supporting the New Left Party. So before your party, and what we're doing now is Collective Action are supporting the setup of the constituency branches. But my argument is that there's a place for citywide branches in places that are urban environments where the natural campaigning, movement building forum is both. So, and that covers we've talked a lot, I think, over the last year about the dual purpose, which is unique about your party, that we're both electoral and we're movement building. And we honour that, and we honour the fights that go on across different in different areas year round. then we get to elections, and that campaigning informs our representatives and it informs who we elect. So in terms of branches and branch makeups, I think there's a really strong argument to have both constituency branches and other formations. So that I wanted to share that and encourage other people to consider that, because that's evolved in Brighton and Hove just simply of how we've been activating. But it just makes sense to me to be promoting that as a formally recognised formation. I wanted to share just a little bit about collective leadership and the idea of collective leadership, and that the need for some really big imagination and exploration of what that means. And I think that there's different experiments and different thinking and different types of activism also that have run and have experienced and have tried out different formations. So sociocracy, amazing thinking, how you organise in that way is we can really be informed by, and the climate movement has historically the climate movement and climate activism has tried different things in terms of collective leadership, and of course there's other forms of collective leadership. So I'd really be interested to hear more discussions about what are the different models that we know, what do we think collective leadership should look at, because people go, what do you mean collective leadership? All we know is one leader, and it's really unimaginative. And a lot of the younger activists have been experimenting and doing stuff with this. So I think we really need to pull together around that and what that is. The revolution will not be televised. People clicking at home, voting at home. That is not how people develop their thinking. There's a really interesting debate about the difference between delegates and one member, one vote, and voting at home. And Roger Hallam gave a very interesting talk with Ash Sarkar about this. I think that there's again, we just need to be exploring these things, but we have to move fast, because as far as I can tell, the clique is still in charge, and the CEC elections are really vital. So yeah, I think I've said everything I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Very good. Thanks, Sam. Very good. Matthew.
Hi, comrades. Yeah, thanks for that. No, I think there's a bunch of stuff on this one. Obviously, I mean, in terms of, it was interesting to see. I mean, who was at conference?
Expect more. Sky have brilliant offers on the latest handsets.
Folks just need to go.
Somebody needs music.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing in terms of the who was at conference, and the fact that they call a conference at 2 weeks' notice. And they offer no assistance for anybody to get there or to find anywhere to stay, and then they complain where it's actually the left that turns up, because they're the people who basically got it in them to go, in those terms. So I mean, it obviously changed the character. The problem was also, of course, I mean, in terms of the effort to bar people, it was absolutely cynical. On those in those terms. I mean, essentially what they did was to say at the eve of conference, and people actually were either in Liverpool or travelling to Liverpool, we're barring people. Now, they did that to the SWP basically because the SWP is not overly popular, but in reality to restrict everybody else, to say, well, we will set the political limits on the organisation. This is what's permissible, and we will decide who is and is not a member, according to whether we like them or not. Obviously, that didn't go down very well, and quite rightly so. And I think that obviously you've had votes insofar as they could. People voted against that, and rightly. I mean, the point was that also, of course, what they did was to tightly control what was actually discussed and voted on. Which was, I mean, really quite appalling, given the fact that clearly people wanted to discuss a whole lot of other stuff, and they weren't allowed to. In terms of, I mean, the fact that you got, for instance, a constitution which is completely unworkable. It's absolutely unworkable. It's not really constitution of any nature at all. And you've got a leadership effectively of 18 people. 16 elected in England, one in Scotland and one in Wales, to run an organisation, which I mean is just not big enough. It's not possible to do that. So we're going to have to work our way around all that stuff. And then you've got a situation where Jeremy took up an hour in the single transferable Jeremy speech in a quite a short conference. I was saying not very much, and whereas in fact, of course, Zara did say, I mean, quite a lot. I mean, they give her 10 minutes at the end. She said quite, actually quite good stuff. Interestingly enough, I mean, she actually said, was talking about nationalisation and so on, which is not, I mean, okay. I mean, I think, politically we can be critical and the rest of it. But the point being is what she's saying is a challenge she's saying to the ruling class is, unfit to run the country. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a direct challenge. Now, this is why she's been denounced, and she's been denounced by a whole series of people, not just Jeremy, George Galloway, Tariq Ali, and Owen Jones, and other such riffraff. Because she said that. And the point being is, she's quite right to say that. But I think, I mean, I don't agree with the right is particularly strong. I mean, what's happening now, of course, is that the ruling class, in desperation, I mean, this is the ruling class is not in a strong position, either economically or socially. It is playing the race card, and essentially what it is doing is saying to millions of people in the country, we don't want you. That itself causes them huge problems. They in those terms. I mean, and of course, I mean, obviously, the situation is only going to get worse. And I mean, if you look at it, I mean, there's no way actually the likes of Farage and these people are at all prepared or fit to run the government. It would be an absolutely desperate thing if that happened. So in those terms, I think it's an extraordinary situation, and really it's then a question, as people have also said, in terms of how do you organise, and what's actually happening, of course, is that people are organising, and this is the real guts of this, is the fact that obviously none of our so-called leaders actually have proven themselves particularly fit to run anything, but people have said, right, well, this is our chance, and this is one of the very few, if any, chances we're going to get, so we're going to try and make it work. And that's correct. I mean, that's the driver of it, is the fact that people are organising, even from what the terrible state position they've been put in. They've got no ability to contact people. I mean, you've been having to go around and assemble people's details from contacting them and them contacting you and all this, and running activity and pulling people in that way, rather than actually having any access to either the membership data or the data of the 850,000 people. Which is the obvious thing, is to contact all of those people and say, okay, well, you've said you're interested. What do you want to do now? And it's
Matthew,
in those terms, complete foolishness.
Matthew.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I'm not cutting you short straight away, but there are a number of comrades.
No, I know. Yes, I realise that. Yeah. No, that's fine. Okay, I'll finish there.
You may be able to come back later anyway. It's Larry, then Harry.
Thanks, Roger. I'll keep my contribution short. I'm one of those people that signed up an interest in your party, but not actually become a member yet. And I was waiting for the conference to see how strong the grass movement was at that conference and whether it could take on the leadership. And as a consequence of that, I'm now going to join your party in our local branch in Hastings. What this has done, in my opinion, is it gives us a new opportunity, certainly the first opportunity in my lifetime, to build a united front, to achieve a mass party with the foundation of a mass movement, because we can't have one or the other. It's got to be both, in my opinion, and that has got to be built around a program. We haven't got a program yet, and that does give me a problem in relation to the premature, in my opinion, elections in spring. Because if we don't go forward with a program that is aimed at the working class, then I think that we're just putting people up. I don't know. I just don't see it myself. What I want to see is accountable branches, and that autonomy. The accountability and the strength of those branches are going to be based upon the data that Naomi mentioned and the funding. With regard to some of the statements that have come out from people that are assuming leadership in your party, you can't have the collective leadership has got to be with collective responsibility. And I think just coming out with headline grabbing statements, like, I mean, I'm a Republican and I welcome the fact that Sultana has actually said about the royal family, but she's speaking without portfolio. You know, these are her personal views, and I think these are things we have to draw the working class people away from the royal family, but we have to develop a Republican program to do that. And as I say, with the elections coming, I think that we're far too early for standing elections in spring, in my opinion. I think that a lot of people will become disillusioned if we don't have a good result. Anyway, thanks, Roger. And thanks for organising the meeting.
Thank you, Larry. Comrade Harry next.
Hi, comrades. Harry, Northern Ireland here. I mean, at the moment within your party, there is effectively everything to fight for. And that's going to start next year. Now, we have witnessed at this conference, this clique around Corbyn, how bureaucratic they've been, how ruthless they've been in trying to quell. I mean, it wasn't just the SWP, and one of them was effectively marched out of the conference by security. But all the socialist formations were effectively not allowed to have stalls inside the conference, all of them. I spoke to a stall outside Socialist Appeal. They were actually granted a stall, and actually it was taken away from them. Apparently this thing about space and all that sort of stuff. So we know the Corbyn clique, and we know how ruthless they are. And I mean, next year we're talking about some form of cooperation with them and about unity, and what's unity leadership going to be like. We cannot go down the road of unity with these people. If we go down the road of unity, one side is going to win and one side is going to lose. What we need to do is we need to hold our ground, and we need to oppose and expose this clique, and effectively with the aim of driving them out of the party. That's the only way this is going to move forward. Now, Sultana at the conference is a clear, she's certainly got vast majority support. That's not to say Corbyn hasn't. I mean, Corbyn spoke beginning at the end of the conference. But if you take a look at the resolutions that were passed, I mean, for example, you know, dual membership of another political party, just under 70% believe that. I mean, that means 30% does not agree with dual membership. And if that's the case, and by the way, Corbyn made it clear that's not carte blanche. It was passed, of course, that you could belong. But actually what he said afterwards, well, he says if there's another party or organisation that's on the electoral register, they would actually be opposed from inside the party. So even that issue is not finished by any means at all. The leadership model, the collective leadership was just passed by 51%. Well, maybe that's not actually a bad thing in the end, because maybe some people recognize you cannot have a dual leadership. Socialism in the name, you know, 67%. It's less than 70%. So what I'm saying is although there's a Corbyn clique there, it does have support inside that conference. And that clique, I don't believe, are necessarily socialist. I don't think they are. So Corbyn's not a socialist. Corbyn's a capitalist. But he wants to see capitalism on in a more fair society. That's what he always has always been. So, but he still has support in the conference, bearing in mind was sortition, but there is a section of it that certainly backs that effectively doesn't necessarily want socialism and doesn't want democratic control of the party in the branches. Again, the branches, that was only passed, 66% wanted autonomy for the branches. So these are the issues that are going to come up. And if this is going anywhere, they have to be fought, not with unity. Corbyn knows he can get away with these measures because he knows that the Sultana wing will always come for unity. They will always want unity in the end. And that's why he's getting away with this. You see, what we need to ask ourselves, Commons, okay, I'll finish on this point, Roger, because look, we all want a mass working class party, which takes time to build, can take years to build. But this party, okay, let's say it gets off the ground, let's say we stand in elections, local government, regional, and national. Let's say we start making gains in that. Where are we going with this? What are we going to introduce? And this is where political perspectives come into play. The British economy is in such a crisis, no amount of reformism is going to save it. The Starmer government can't do anything to save it. Even if he had an economic program, he can't save it. It's the same in France, same in Italy. German economy is in its third year of recession. The economies in Europe, capitalism is collapsing. And that's what we're faced with. And that consciousness can change very rapidly when something like that happens. We need to gauge in the struggle of the working class, their struggle, their consciousness, and develop that struggle. And it needs to be on a socialist program. You cannot tinker and reform and dilute a socialist program. It's got to be clear in their mind. That is our struggle. And we will see if your party plays a role in that or not. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harry. Very, very important points. We've got a number of comrades speaking. I don't want to put strict time limits, but if comrades can bear in mind that this is an open forum and we want everybody to have their opportunity to speak. So please keep your points short and sharp. Next, comrade Hannah. Not very well.
Can you hear me a lot better now? I think I've just changed it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks everybody. I've been trying to come to various meetings to see what everybody's saying at different things. I just want to come back on a couple of the points that people have been mentioning. I'm not going to go over the whole thing about the conference because I've been over it loads of times now. But just in terms of looking forwards about where we're going to go next, really. I was interested in all the things that people were saying about building branches, and I think it was Han that mentioned about all the different groups that are involved and what's going on. I think for me, one of the best things that's come out of your party forming is lots of different groups on the left starting to talk to each other and form unity platforms. That came out of the Will Transform. There was about 10 or 12 different groups that came together forming unity points, basically. That worked really well within the conference as well, because a lot of people were on the same page and were able to argue for the same points that people had already been talking about. In terms of looking to see where stuff like that is out, there's quite a few different groups. One of the most active ones is probably Democratic Socialists of your party. There's Trans Liberation Group. I'm a member of RS21. There's another one, Organising for Popular Power, which is looking at base building and how to do community organising and community listening exercises and things like that as well. I try and think of the other one. There's another one, Socialist Unity Platform. I think that came about around the conference. But there's quite a few different, and there's also an environmental one. I can't remember the name off the top of my head now, but like Eco Socialist Horizon or something like that. So there are quite a few of these active groups that are forming and making Unity platforms. In terms of the position for like CEC, I don't really know how that's going to go in terms of what's going to happen in terms of the how that's going to go out to the membership. I would sort of favour something where people would maybe agree some certain points between themselves to go forwards on that sort of platform. I Democratic Bloc is the other one, yeah, of course. The the other one, so I would favour some people agreeing some of those points, and actually there were quite a lot of points that people did agree upon before they went. It is a difficult one having an election before any political program has actually come up because we don't really know exactly what people are going to sort of go forwards with. I would favour quite a radical program in terms of going forward. I think this is a big opportunity that we have. We already have the Green Party that is already a space on the left that is offering a lot of the things that your party purports to be. So I think we need to really think of like what is actually different about your party, because if we're just offering a little bit left of Labour, there's already the Greens, and they're much more organised and more democratic than your party is. And I think in terms of the people kind of more in kind of who I kind of organise with, we're kind of wanting more of a radical change, I suppose, rather than just something very reformist in terms of where we're going. And I appreciate there needs to be things within that in terms of how this forms. But there's lots of lessons from other workers' parties across Europe about how socialist parties have formed and been successful, and also in Mamdani's campaign that we could mimic. I don't think we should be apologetic about our stances. This is not the time to be apologetic about it. We've got a big opportunity that we can start to go forwards with. One of the other things I just wanted to mention in terms of the one member, one vote, in terms of accessibility, I think at the moment we haven't really won those arguments for accessibility. And I think just to be mindful of the people have alluded to it already about how to kind of improve that on a branch level might be something that we could turn that around in the future. But I think just saying at the moment we don't want that then would be a thing. I'll just, yeah, so I'll just circle back. I'm just interested to know in terms of what people's views are for the CEC elections, how people are going to organise around that.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. We've got Eric next.
Thanks, Chair. Few people, Han and Harry, and indeed Hannah as well, has just mentioned the what's been referred to as the clique that are currently running your party. In October, I was present at an online meeting where Carrie Murphy, who Mr. Corbyn congratulated for being the organiser for the conference, we had a question and answer session with Carrie Murphy. And the first question that we asked Carrie was, could you tell us who the people are that are currently working with the Independent Alliance of MPs? And Carrie informed us that there were approximately 12 people on what she described as an executive team. But she actually said that due for concerns that if people revealed their identity, they'd suffer hostility on social media, that she was unable to say who those other 12 people were. Now that your party is actually established, I really do think, and I would ask people on this call that are in proto branches and they're on social media, I think right now we've really got to insist that all meetings of this unelected group of people that are currently working with the Independent Alliance need to be minuted, and we need to know who's involved and how those people have voted. And if people don't wish to reveal their identity, I think they must step down immediately. Now, I'll come on to Hans' point earlier about thinking of new ideas that I am open to, but I think it is a really sound and albeit old-fashioned idea that we need that in order to get transparency. We can't get accountability yet because we haven't elected them. The other thing to finish off on that I really do welcome is this idea about looking at new models of leadership and how we go forward that don't necessarily fit in the definitions that are there for the mainstream parties. What we don't want is another political party that's going to give us the likes of Ramsay MacDonald, Tony Blair, and Keir Starmer. And that ends my contribution. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Good succinct points. Thanks, Eric. Next is Darren and then Danny.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted, I've been scribbling some notes, so if this is not fluid, please forgive me. Just wanted to say something about what Eric's just said about the executive team suffering hostility on social media. That doesn't wash with me, just because who doesn't suffer abuse for their political views on social media? And that seems like a little bit of a smokescreen to say, oh, look, you know, we're victims here. I don't buy into that. If you're going to be political, you're going to have to be out there, and you're going to have to face people that are going to be unpleasant. That is the nature of the internet. Don't go on the internet if you don't want to face these people. So them saying that they're in some group and they don't want to be known in case somebody says something nasty about them, I'm sorry, that's just well, I was going to swear there, but anyway. So don't be put off by that. I'm hoping that everyone here is active in their local branches. Down in Brighton, the grassroots, and that's a word I think we should use more. The grassroots activism has been absolutely fantastic in my experience, and we all should be doing that. And that is simple. That's getting out and leafleting. That's organising the events. That's putting on things. That's engaging with people. That is really important. And I've been on quite a few of these meetings, and they feel a bit like a bubble to me. You've got to be in there, you've got to be active, and you've got to be out there doing that. And that also ties in with the accessibility of that. I've got chronic health issues. I can't always be available with my resources and my capacity to help, but when I can, I do. So we need to encourage more people to get involved in this on that score. Maybe the last thing I'll end with, or the last 2 points. Firstly, there's two great opportunities that I've noticed recently that popped up. The National Emergency Brief. Now, I'll put it in the chat. I would suggest that everyone gets informed about this. It's a group of scientists and leading figures in the climate movement who are asking for a televised debate about the emergency of the climate. Now, if we want to get somewhere where we're tackling why the Greens are stealing our thunder, why don't we take the Greens on in that environment and get ourselves aligned with this particular campaign, or at least understand it? We've got an opportunity. We're a small group, really, I think, at the moment, and we've got an opportunity with the National Emergency Brief to be supportive of that, and supportive now, because it's happening now. We can't wait for 6 months. This is hot at the moment. The other thing is the Together march on the 28th of March next year. And I really think that that's another massive opportunity to get the branches out with the banners. By the way, it's not helpful that we don't have any, and I haven't heard anything about this, any directive at the moment of what colour it is going to be, what fonts are we going to continue the same looking thing? When it comes to advertising who we are, if you go look at all the social media groups, especially on Facebook, when you look at their profile headers, they've all got different things on there. There's no continuity about what the party looks like. And there's no directive coming from anywhere for any design or whatever that we're going to move on. And I think that's important to get ourselves branded in that way, so that people start to associate a look with what we're about. And especially if we're looking at going to these, supporting these initiatives like the National Emergency Brief and the Together march, we need to be there. I think, wouldn't that look great if we had a sea of people, all from their branches, all with the same banners saying, here we are, we're together, we're doing this. And I think that would give a very powerful message to people who really on the outside don't know much about us. Last thing I wanted to say was that, yeah, it was quite interesting, the race card. That is, it's becoming a one political issue in this country at the moment, and that is the race point of view, especially if you don't know what's going on in Crowborough, which is actually quite near to where me and Hannah are in the neck of the woods. It's a pretty dire situation with this sort of large groups of people saying they're out to protect the streets. It's it's a very right wing motivated thing, and that is, I think, is going to be the hot issue for the next election. So let's get on that. We've got to say that your party is opposed to this and be as loud as the others about this. And if we're not, what are we saying to people? What are we saying? What are we trying to get people involved and excited about joining us to fight? The Greens, I don't know where they're at with that in that respect of how loud they are being about anti-fascist, but we can do that, and that's all parts of the social list movement can do that. Anyway, I've said my bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Some very important points there. Next is Comrade Danny, who, if I'm not mistaken, is speaking from several thousand miles away. Am I right?
You are, Roger. Thank you. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so please forgive me a little bit. I think the big question that your party members have got to figure out after the conference is whether your party is going to be a mass working class party, or whether it's going to be a pure revolutionary socialist party, and it goes with a maximalist program, which is going to stop it being a mass movement party, which is a real shame, because there's a space for a mass movement party on the left for the working class, because the Labour Party is abandoning it. They're abandoning their place in it, and it sounds like Unite would quite possibly having a special conference where they will disaffiliate from it. I just want to say very quickly about hybrid meetings, people voting from home. It's where I would disagree with Naomi, because I'm one of the many people that was expelled from the Labour International CLP. We've been, just by the nature of the Labour International, we were always voting and Zoom meetings from home. I mean, very rarely could you get more than half a dozen people in the same country together. In a way, you have to trust the members, because they're sitting at home and voting by online isn't a reason to distrust their. I think we could even see on the voting with your party conference that the votes pretty well went to the left. Luke Akehurst made a big mistake when he pushed the idea of Labour Party supporters having a vote in the election for leadership of the Labour Party, because he was under the belief that the people that would just be in supporters were going to be more conservative. In fact, they ended up being more radical than totally spoilt that little plan that he had. He thought that they were going to go the other way. The people that were expelled or left Labour International formed their own group called the International Labour Network. It's written into the constitution of the YP that there is going to be an international branch. Again, we're stuck because we aren't getting any of the database. Some of those 800,000 people that had interest, some of them must have been living outside of Britain, but we're not getting any of the list or anything. So we're not in touch with all the people, which would be nice. Just very last thing, we've got to hope that somehow the CEC elections, that we don't waste too many good people. I mean, Naomi mentioned Ken Loach. I mean, I know we're all getting on a bit, but I mean, what a shame if Ken Loach is not involved. Beth Winter, Jamie Driscoll, Andrew Feinstein. Andrew, is it? Yeah, it is Feinstein. You know, these people should be involved somewhere along the line. I'm going to stop there. I don't want to take up more time, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. We've got Mark, then Phil, then Dominic, then Felicity.
Hi, it's actually Lucy. Sorry, it's because I'm using my husband's
Oh, I've got to say,
computer.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry. So it's Lucy. Just a few points picking up on a few things people said. We were both actually lucky enough to be sortition for conference, and just unbelievably disappointed with how it was run. I kind of perhaps naively went into it thinking it was going to be this amazing kind of democratic exercise, and I mean, in so many ways, it wasn't. I was really shocked to see on stage some of the worst Labour Party officials and MPs we've had sitting up there, and it made me realise, wow, these are the guys. This is the clique that's involved, you know, and what we're up against, because these are the guys that worked against all of us that were involved in the left of the Labour Party. I mean, I won't bore you with it all, but I listed 14 separate things that were done to reduce democracy throughout that conference. And to be honest, it's amazing that we did as well as we did, considering how badly it was locked down. In terms of the dual membership vote that Naomi mentioned, I mean, it's great that that got through, but we have to remember that they can still throw people out. The CEC will decide on what groups and parties are allowed, and at the moment, they can list what they want. So we need to be really careful about saying we've won that one because we haven't quite got there yet. And actually, expulsions still need to be turned around. You know, no matter what you think of the SWP, this is first they came for, yeah? You know that poem that says, first they came for so-and-so and you didn't stand up. This is what they will do. It will be a witch hunt that will remove everybody on the left. So we've got to be really serious. We've got to get behind getting those expulsions overturned. On the positive note, and I think Hannah mentioned it, the Unity platform, the Left Unity platform. I've never been in a meeting. I counted 17 different radical left groups, and they were all sitting in a room and actually debating and respecting each other's position and willing to work together. That's amazing. I think that's like something to be really celebrated. One of my concerns is that a lot of the grassroots membership, I'm in lots of groups, like I'm sure we all are, on WhatsApp and online, how they have such blind faith in those in charge. You know, we need to educate people. The people in charge currently are not interested in grassroots. They're not interested in handing over money. They're not interested in handing over data. They don't want a democratic organisation. So we've really got to drill it through to people that we need to remove them. I'm afraid. I know that sounds very draconian, but they need to go. And quite literally, it's not just about money and data, it's how the CEC elections are run, how conferences run, it's everything, it's how the entire party's run. So it's absolutely imperative that we get the right people onto the CEC. And I'm very keen to hear about how we communicate that, because we're not getting communication from the party. So we need to communicate between ourselves about those that are genuinely democratic, socialist, grassroots members. And yes, I would agree, Together March, everyone needs to mobilise for that march. We need to show the fascists that there is an alternative voice and we can be bigger, better and stronger than them.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Comrade Phil.
Hi, Roger. Thanks. Yeah, so I wanted to make a couple of points. First, local elections. So the ones coming up in May in London and metropolitan boroughs and most of the unitary authorities that cover large towns. These will be the last elections before the next general election. So if your party is going to have any credibility, it really needs to make a strong standing at these elections. And it's really unfortunate that it's been so slow to set up your party. Like Corbyn has delayed and delayed for 5 years. And now everyone's like, oh, the elections are coming up a bit too soon. So we've known for 5 years that they were coming. And I'm really just appalled at the abrogation of responsibility and not getting on with it faster. Another big problem with setting up local branches is this 20% of members need to come to a meeting to get a branch formed. I was chair of one of the biggest Labour branches in the country. We never got more than 5% of our members to a meeting. It's very like trade unions, unless there's a strike on, you never see your members. I think it's going to be really difficult to get branches up on that basis, and it will be totally controlled by the clique in Controller National because they've got the membership list. They're the ones that will advertise that the meeting's happening. And if they continue their current form, they'll only encourage branches to form where they know their allies are going to control them and they've got candidates that they want to stand in the elections coming up. Yeah, branches really, you need to create your own membership list and start organising from the grassroots. Like this whole centralised membership database has been used to control the conference. It's been used to control and delay branches setting up. And it was a big mistake to go with a national membership system because it also pre-decided the issue of whether it was going to be a federal or a unitary structure, which some people were arguing for federal structure. And in hindsight, I think they were probably right. Second point is the CEC elections. So it did look like they might be quite good. A 16-member executive, STV. Every tendency of the party would have had a chance of getting someone on the CEC. Now it's been turned into 9 elections for 2 or 1 seats in each region. It's completely transformed the nature of that election. The Corbyn will organise a loyalist, unitary, unifying slate, like loyal to Corbyn, loyal to the membership, loyal to the leadership, and they'll win at least 1 seat in every region, and therefore they'll have a majority on the executive. All the other groups will pick up a seat here or there, but Corbyn's faction will, instead of being like a quarter or a third of the CEC, they'll have a majority. There won't be any democracy. That decision's completely transformed the nature of what we're fighting. So I think it looks really not great for the short term in your party. If you'd asked me 4 years ago, is this worth waiting for? I would have said no. But we're where we are. We're where we are now. So I guess we've got to fight, I guess. But people also need to be ready for walking out. Danny said we've got a choice between a revolutionary party or a mass workers party. But I think either of those are relatively good options. What we might end up with is a completely undemocratic, degenerated, reformist party it's not a mass party and it's not a revolutionary party. So I think if you're going to put a lot of effort into this, make sure you organise locally and you have the resources that you're independent of the national, because it might go tits up before the next election. Yeah, I'm sorry to be pessimistic, but I don't think that conference could have gone much worse. Like I was cynical and pessimistic a year ago, but I never predicted it would be that bad. Like I was just appalled by the bureaucracy and the manoeuvring. It's just totally cynical, like beyond my worst nightmares. Right, thanks, Roger.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Dominic.
Yeah, there's just some bits and pieces I wanted to raise. I think the first point is that I think we've got to recognise that as far as Corbyn and the group around him are concerned, they don't want this party to exist. And that's a situation you've got to start fighting against. And what comes out of the elections in the spring of next year is something that we're going to have to live with and fight against if necessary. But what we've also got to do is start building on the issues that I think are important to the working class. I think as far as I'm concerned, people raising issues like should we have an American ambassador, an Israeli ambassador, are just red herrings for people to stick in the air and make us look stupid. The issues we should be fighting on, should people have a house? Should some people have a decent standard of living? Should people have education for the children, health service for the whole community? I mean, I was just thinking of one simple example that we could take on as a policy program, and that's the building of the question of having local control over building houses, taking it out of the capitalists to a large extent by putting up things like direct works, which used to exist in councils and used to build housing estates. I think those are the things that we've got to be putting our priorities on. And I think the other thing is, what we've got to do is do an orientation towards the trade unions. And I'm not talking of the trade union leaderships, but it was raised at a discussion I was in recently where there was a conference and there's a dispute next around the corner, and nobody went from the conference to see the strike, the pickets. Mostly, I should imagine, because they weren't aware of it. But the situation is we've got to be aware of labour disputes and get involved in them from a branch basis and discuss with them and make an approach to the trades councils in towns and cities that have still got them, and ask for the right to put forward what we're fighting for, which is a party that's going to advance the interests of the working class and not boast of the profits of the capitalists. And when you look at it, the mess this country's in, and the countries around the world in, with housing, with health and all the rest of it, all of that is based on profit, and that the demand of the capitalists to expand their profit at the risk, not the risk, at the cost of the working class. And I think those are things that we should be taking up at branch level. And I'm sure we could expand issues from like direct works to whole other issues, that are important to the working class. The debates about, if you like, democracy, I mean, the only way we can progress is through a collective leadership. If you look at it, it's not the best example of democracy, but democracy is only exercised if people fight for it and keep fighting for it. I mean, most of the trade unions are based on collective leadership, whether it's at district level or at the national executive and so on, where you take votes and you take a decision about what you're doing. So I think that's the only way we can progress and try and build the branches and try and build links between the branches. I'll leave it at that.
Very good points. Thanks, Dominic. We've got Felicity and Philip. And if there are no more, if comrades don't mind, I'd like to get into the queue. And maybe that will stimulate some more discussion, or maybe then we'll ask Naomi to reply. But next we have Comrade Felicity.
Thanks, Roger. I think the issue of the branches is definitely the key one. If the branches are strong, the party will grow. Sorry. And that you don't have to have their permission to go and set up a proto branch. You just set one up. That's what's happened all across the country. No one's asked permission. Just go and set one up. And certainly in Liverpool, I'm based in the Cheshire area, but I come from Liverpool. In the Liverpool area, the Liverpool Community Independence is very much a functioning organisation, and they are on every picket line. Every picket line, there's people from Liverpool Community Independence there. And I think that Lucy's speech at the beginning of conference really set the tone that we should be following. I'm sorry if some people didn't hear it, but Lucy Williams spoke fantastically, and really, set the core. This is a working class party. We're going to be fighting for working class people. We're going to talk in terms that working class people understand. And that doesn't mean being reformist. It just means putting things in terms that people understand. I want to raise a couple of other issues. One is that there was a report published today, which a lot of the left will not have noticed, about the fact that you can't have babies safely in this country. the number of babies dying at birth, the number of women dying giving birth, all at risk because of the state of the NHS. Campaigning on the NHS is talking to people about knowing an issue they know about and they care about. So please take up the issue of the NHS. If you want briefings on it, get hold of me, get hold of some other people. We'll give you the briefings you need on the NHS. It's the biggest gain we still have from the post-war period, and it's massively under threat. Massively worth saving and massively under threat. The second thing is that we should build eco-socialism into everything we do. Like I say, the LCI are there on every picket. We've got to have them there on every. Interestingly, Sam, one of the councillors in Liverpool, has been a lead on a lot of the eco issues in Liverpool, and they've taken it up very seriously. The third thing is the anti-fascist work. And I mean serious anti-fascist work, not standing on the corner with the placard, but working out what you can do in terms of really stopping the fascists. And the other side of that is always putting forward our policies carefully, clearly, and making sure people know what we're there. We're not just there to shout, you're a Nazi, that's quite nice at times. But it's there, we're there to make that point. And the other point is that we've got to be an internationalist party. Those three speakers from the European left at that conference were really, really good. The lad from the Belgian Workers, the Belgian Workers' Party was superb. But the courage of that young lad from Die Linke, speaking completely against Die Linke's positions. Die Linke's got appalling positions on everything he was very good on. And the young French woman speaking, as the one who's the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, they all spoke really, really well and set a good tone. So we've got to be internationalist, and we've got to take the issue of women's rights seriously as well. We can't just say, oh dear, that's too sensitive an issue to touch. We've got to deal with women's rights as well. That's me.
Oh, very good, Felicity. Philip.
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me okay? Good.
Yes, yeah.
I'm someone who hadn't really been following a lot of these factional things that happened before. I knew they were happening, but I didn't know the details. I was sortitioned to go to the conference, and I thought the sortition gave a good balance of people. Most of the people I spoke to were like me, had never been to a conference before, a political conference before. They found it helpful, and they were helpful to have their democratic vote on things. My view is that I thought that the conference, especially on the Saturday, was deliberately trying to be sabotaged by the SWP. I'm not saying they should have been excluded, but people were going up, instead of talking about the issue, were talking about what they wanted to talk about, and that destroyed some of the proper debate that was available. I do agree there should have been more time for debate, and I think in retrospect there's a number of things I would have changed about the conference. But on the other hand, I felt that overall the outcome was positive, and it reaffirmed democratic rights. I don't believe that whoever was organising the conference or the documents and things were following any particular pattern or particular sect or way. Certainly the revised documents, to me, reflected very much the general feeling in the assembly that I went to, and I felt that that was good. And I was positively surprised by the documents when they came through, although they came through very late. So that's my view. I find it difficult to hear people arguing that people at home or who are disabled or whoever can't participate in branch meetings or vote. That to me is undemocratic. It should be everybody have a vote. If you can't convince all the members of your point of view, then you don't deserve to get it through. And it was clear from my discussions in Assembly that the people who wanted to retain only a delegate vote from branches tended to be the activists who wanted to make sure their point of view was going across. And I don't think that's right. It needs to be broad-based, and we really got to get together to make this work. And that doesn't mean excluding people who are pro Jeremy Corbyn or things or anything like that. We need to have something that everybody works together. I believe the will's there on all sides. And, you know, there's not a hairbreadth in policy between Jeremy and Zara. Not really what they're saying. It's something to do with personalities and the way things have been done structurally. But there's an opportunity, the establishment of the CDC, for the staffing and everything to be sorted out properly if the right people get in. And I don't want to see slates. They're a complete nuisance at the thing. People have been handing me bits of paper telling me to vote this way and that. At the same time, some of those are very deflammatory about individuals. It's not the commonly way to debate. So that's my view. That's my summing up of the thing. I was encouraged by it. And I went away feeling a bit despondent at the start of it, come away encouraged and felt that there was something that we could move on with. And the other comment I'd like to make is that I know I'm part of a group who was ex-Labour people, and I know of at least 3 or 4 people who are still in the Labour Party and were waiting for the conference to decide whether it'll come out. I think there will be a lot more members and people come over who are Labour, have been fed up with it, but just felt they couldn't leave, who will do. And I think that will make a big difference as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Nigel, and then if comrades will permit me, I'll want to come in briefly. Right, Nigel.
Yeah, very briefly, I would agree with Eric, his point about demanding the names of the organisers and what their roles were in organising the conference. We're entitled to know that, and their continuing role within the organisation. We should demand a detailed description of the process, and we could give them a proposal, couldn't we, for how they could manage the process. Because in Calder Valley, when we sent in our amendments, we had a detailed proposal for how you would elect a CEC, a title I don't like. I don't like the description executive, giving them executive powers, and at central, the central executive aspect of it, I think it's very top down and inappropriate. We need to nominate people and fight for them, and we need to demand the names of our local comrades very soon. I mean, there's no excuse for not getting them now. They've been prevaricating for far too long. So working together with groups we're in and so on, and this group and others, to make concrete demands in this situation, trying to increase the democracy. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Nigel. Okay, if comrades, if there's no other comrades want to come in, I want to make a couple of very brief points, and then we'll ask Naomi to reply. Right, comrades, there hasn't been much discussion tonight about the policies, and it's more about the structure, and that's understandable because the conference too did not really discuss policy. It was about the organisation and structure of the party. But I want to make just one point, which I think actually bridges the two issues, because Danny referred to the election in 2016 of Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party, and that came about because the bureaucracy completely misunderstood. They were completely insulated against the mood in society. They thought they were desperate. They didn't want another trade union appointee to win the leadership, as the Ron Miliband had won the previous election. They wanted David, not Ed. And so they thought, right, what can we do? We'll have the next election. They changed the rules as they do every leadership election. And they said this time, let anybody join, anybody at all, anybody who wants to not join, no, just to vote. They just pay £3 down and they're allowed to vote. Because look how popular New Labour was. Look how Blair won 3 elections in a row and so on. And that will put those lefties in their place. We'll be able to swamp them with all these non-political new people. And they got the shock of their lives because what they found, they completely misunderstood what was happening in society. They were completely cocooned in their parliamentary bubble. And they didn't know that people were absolutely straining to have a voice in politics and to exert their will. And so what was the effect of that? Corbyn won with an absolute landslide. And that put them in their place. Now, paradoxically, the organisers of the conference last week, Corbyn or Corbyn's organizer, Kerry Murphy, they made the same mistake. They thought if we have branches developed and they're going to elect delegates, then that's got to be all these activists and people who been on the streets and been organising and joining all kinds of little parties and all that. We don't want that. We'll throw it open to everybody. We'll just say we'll say we won't have elected delegates. We'll have people just selected at random, just a lottery, a raffle to see who's there. And they made exactly the same mistake because whether you do it by election or whether you do it by raffle and by a lottery or whatever, people want change. People were absolutely motivated to build a party which is going to offer a real alternative, a radical alternative. And that mistake, I'm afraid, I want to get back to the point that Comrade Naomi said at the beginning. She quoted Tariq Ali. And I'm afraid, in my opinion, Tariq Ali is making exactly the same mistake because he's saying, oh, look, all these people, look how much support there is for the far right and how racism is triumphant and so on. Well, that's true. And that's by default. It's precisely because we don't have a left party and a socialist party giving them a voice and giving them an opportunity to express their disgust and their revolt and their determination to change society. That's what happened. That's the reason why reform is there. We have this so-called two-party system that we have in Britain. It's ludicrous when people say, "Oh, we can't get anywhere because of the two-party system." The two parties are both on the verge of collapse. The two traditional parties, the Tory party and the Labour Party, are both going to be wiped out probably or virtually in the next election, and that's why all the signs are that we're going to have a massive majority for these disgusting, evil, reactionary racists of so-called reform. But why are they going to reform? Of course, some of them are. Of course, there is a real swelling of reaction and of racism and of the most appalling reactionary ideas. But the main thing, as far as working people are concerned, and by the way, it's a figure that I often quote. 60% of the population still regard themselves as working class. In any opinion poll, that's been proved time and time again. That's the same figure that consider themselves working class in 1983, before the closure of the shipyards and the coal mines and the car plants and the steel works and so on. And that's because of because we now have doctors and lawyers and university lecturers and teachers on strike and mounting really militant campaigns, because now we still overwhelming the big majority of the population know that they're workers and they're exploited. They have to live by selling their labour power, and that they are absolutely open to the ideas socialism and the ideas that we want the new party to put forward. And that's the point. We don't start by saying, I mean, it's completely wrong to hold up a finger to the wind, if you like, lick our fingers and hold it up to the wind and say, look how there's so many reactionary ideas now, so on. So we have to kind of modify our policies because we want the, that's completely back to front. What we need to do is we put forward the only solutions that will work. Socialist solutions, socialist policies are the only ones that can actually meet the needs and the demands of the mass of the population. It's we don't say, well, you know, we can't put a Leninist policy now because, and that's it's not a question. Of course, calling it Leninist makes it sound kind of foreign and alien. But the point is, we have to put forward full-blooded socialist policies because only full-blooded socialist policies will make any difference to the lives of the population, and that's true everywhere. And that's why there was the need, and that's why not only a need, but that's why 800,000 people were initially ready to sign up to the call for a new socialist party. So I would say we absolutely have to put forward the only policies that actually are realistic and deal with the situation. And if we do that, and if we do it properly, and if we organise and mobilise properly, then we can win. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.